everybody. Welcome at Shadow at Night for Tuesday, January the 7th, 2025. On the show tonight, is Donald Trump serious? I mean, is he really serious? He talks a good game. Is he going to try and take over Canada, Panama, Greenland via Denmark? Press conference today. Ooh, baby. Trudeau came up with something on Twitter/X to try and counter that narrative and failed miserably because he's a lame duck and an ass. And nobody takes him seriously, even though, I guess the CBC still tries to, but we all know better, right? So we're going to cover all of that. And Mark Zuckerberg released a video today. He claims that Meta, his two big platforms, Instagram and Facebook, will no longer be using those fact checkers, the ones who have gotten me, shut down over the past 4 years for sharing actual information. That's right. I wonder if he's going to still derank people for violations, because I'm still deranked on Facebook. With 57,000 followers, I'm still deranked. And the videos on Facebook, generally speaking, get 12 or 13,000 views on average when it should be up around 30 or 40,000. But hey, who am I to complain? That's why we do Rumble. That's why we do X. That's why we do YouTube now, even though I'm not sure how much longer that's going to last. That's why we do Telegram and all of the others, including shadowdavis.com. And tonight, I know I said last night we're going to do part 2, what we did last night, part 1. But people have been sending me this very fascinating video called The Illusion is Canada. It was posted on, I forget which, maybe YouTube, maybe Rumble, maybe Odyssey, one of those platforms 3 or 4 days ago. It's not gotten a lot of views. We're going to play that in the extension tonight. It's 48 minutes. It's well worth the watch. And then it will be available on the website afterwards for all access members. So if you're not an all access member, then come on and become an all access member. It's not expensive. It's shadowdavis.com, shadowdavis.com. The show is brought to you, as always, by CanadaNanoSilver.com.
Comparing Crest toothpaste to Silver Circles toothpaste. First, we're starting out with Crest. It's a classic. It's an original. It's what I've used most of my life. But that being said, it does have its problems. First off, the consistency is so weird and thick, and I get it's a paste, but it really doesn't spread that well. And I must also say that I'm not in love with the taste. I get toothpaste isn't supposed to taste good, but why shouldn't it? But that being said, it does get the job done. Next, we have Silver Cuticles. They have 3 flavors, but today we're going with Bubbleberry. And already it smells so good. So I'm excited to see what this tastes like. The consistency is also a lot smoother, and I must say it spreads way nicer in your mouth.
This literally tastes like fruit bubblegum.
Yeah, this toothpaste was pretty good. I actually went in for seconds. And it's infused with nano silver, so it helps remineralize your teeth and keep them fresh throughout the day.
100% go with Silver Cuticles.
And here's the results. What's your favorite toothpaste?
CanadaNanoSilver.com, obviously, is the website. I say it every night at least 3 or 4 times. CanadaNanoSilver.com, CanadaNanoSilver.com, CanadaNanoSilver.com. You can also get a hold of Kevin and Anna through the contact tab on the website under contact. And if you're looking for retail locations, there's a retail locations tab as well. CanadaNanoSilver.com. Before we do the hellos tonight and the reminder to share and like, tomorrow night on the show, it's going to be interesting because we have a special guest coming on. Her name is Jasmine Lane. If you're from Winnipeg, you may have heard her on the radio off and on for the past few years. She's no longer on radio. She's got her own thing going now, mostly on YouTube, at least at this point. Hopefully she branches out to other platforms like this show has, but mostly on YouTube. Her show is called Overly Opinionated with Jasmine Lane. And here's a sample.
So let me get this straight. Canadians who are taxed upwards of 50% when you factor in provincial and federal on all of their income, and every single purchase that we make is also taxed, pay for our government to travel all over the world to places we could never afford, to eat meals we could only dream of, to decorate their homes and offices with the most luxurious artwork, to spend over $50,000 a month on alcohol, to fly globally on a private jet while we are no longer allowed to bring carry-ons as a part of our airfare, to live in lavish homes, the kinds that we grew up looking at in magazines, and then when they blow through all of our money on all of those things, they add in more taxes so that not only are we paying for them to live better than us, but then we're also paying down their debt because when they ran out of money, they couldn't just stop.
I'm looking forward to tomorrow night. Jasmine Lane of Overly Opinionated with Jasmine Lane on YouTube will be joining the show tomorrow night, same time as regular, 8 o'clock Central. Hello, Sheila from Alberta watching tonight. Terry is watching on Facebook in Ottawa. I was thinking today, and I'm not sure if I'm going to do a thing on this tonight. Maybe I will. Maybe tomorrow. That we need another convoy. Because the way things are going with this election, we have no idea when it's going to be. I mean, I heard Ezra Levant from Rebel News today on with Alex Jones, and they were talking about possible proroguement up until October, maybe later. And they're not talking about any kind of emergency situation, like aliens landing or war or another pandemic. They're not talking about that. They're just talking about basic procedural stuff the Liberal government might try and sneak by with the help of the NDP to stay in power. And Trudeau himself, even though he suggested he was stepping down yesterday, he hasn't quit yet. He is still, and he's not even interim, he's still the leader of the Liberal Party, even though the Liberals will be conducting some kind of a leadership race in the next couple of months. And he's still the prime minister. So we don't know exactly where this is going to go. But with this proroguement, or prorogation happening right now, he's got time to maneuver. Trudeau has got time to maneuver. And let's remember the ego on this guy, the narcissism. He doesn't want to leave. He doesn't want to leave. So we may have to force their hand and go to Ottawa again for another you-know-what. I know some people have been talking about that, and it's mostly musing at this point. It's mostly joking. And we know that we couldn't get the leaders of the last convoy to be involved in this one because they're otherwise occupied still with court cases. So some new blood is going to have to step up and take control. We'll see what happens. Hello, Railroad Ed, watching on YouTube. Mark is watching tonight on Facebook. Hello, Bran, watching in Cambridge, Ontario. John's watching in Newfoundland. Hello, Christine in Anola. Lise is watching in Strathmore, Alberta. Theo Therm 11 watching on YouTube in Mission, British Columbia. Wherever you're watching, whatever platform you're watching on, guys, let's get this out to as many people as we possibly can. Like and share to all of your friends, and hopefully we'll get the views we need to get some action, to get some things done. For example, if I was to say tonight, and maybe I would release this in a 60-second short as well, because I know the attention span of people these days, most people is kind of like about this big. If I were to ask for a convoy tonight to Ottawa and nobody saw it, what would be the point? And this is why I always say like and share and get this out to as many people as possible. We would need 100,000 people, and I'm talking about peacefully standing on the front lawn of the Parliament buildings in Ottawa, holding a sign that says election now. No, none of that stuff. We don't need that stuff. We've already made that point. What we need is people peacefully holding signs that say, we want an election now. We, the people, are speaking, and we want an election now. Not in 2 months, not in 6 months. We want it now. All right. One more thing before we get into Donald Trump and what he said today. Looks like we've got another one of these active transportation community plans happening in Manitoba. This one is in Steinbach. So this is a little bigger. It's not like Emerson with 700 people, and it's not like Morris with 3,000 or 2,000 people. This is Steinbach. This is, I think, the third or fourth largest city in the province of Manitoba right now. Population about 17 or 18,000. I know that sounds weird, but it's, for those of you living outside of Manitoba, you mean the third or fourth largest city in your province is only 18,000 people? I get it, but that's just the way this province is constructed population-wise somehow. I don't know how it got that way, but out of the 1.4 million people who live here, 950,000 of them live in the Winnipeg area, which is strange. Anyway, Steinbach, which is about 30 miles, give or take, southeast of the city of Winnipeg, says, please join us at the open house reviewing the city of Steinbach's official community plan and zoning bylaw and active transportation plan. You know what this means, my friends. Yeah. Another one of these globalist plans, another one of these UN SDG, Sustainable Development Goals plans. I haven't seen the plan, so I can't say for sure. I haven't had a chance to look at it yet, but you can bet your bottom dollar that it's the same as all the other plans we've seen. And why all of a sudden are all these communities across the country saying, hey, we've got a new active transportation plan for you, community plan, it's going to be great. Why suddenly all of them together? Isn't that kind of strange? I mean, I've never seen municipalities, any sort of elected bodies or townships or countries or states or provinces act in such unison the way these municipalities have been for the past year now. City of Steinbach is making revisions to the official community plan and zoning bylaw and is developing an active transportation plan. And they're meeting to discuss this with you, the people, on Wednesday, January the 15th, between 6 and 8 o'clock at the Steinbach City Hall foyer. So go and pack the place, and you can find more information on the city's website, which is steinbach.ca. Again, that is steinbach.ca. This is an article that goes back to a CBC article that goes back to 2018, talking about how Trudeau referred to Canada as a post-nation state. So we're going to come back to that. But first, here is Pierre Poilievre on Canada becoming America's 51st state in an interview on CTV before Christmas.
We need a strong, smart prime minister who has the brains and backbone to first and foremost say to President Trump, Canada will never be the 51st state. We will be an independent, proud, sovereign country, as we always have been. We are blessed to live next door to the greatest military and economic superpower the world has ever seen, which President Trump will soon again lead. The president has raised some reasonable concerns about the broken liberal border and our military. And I would respond by saying we do need to reinforce our border with drones, helicopters, boots on the ground, and other high-performing technology to keep drugs and guns from crossing, to stop human trafficking, and we will.
All right. So there is Poilievre saying that, hey, we're not going to be the 51st state. We're Canada. We're an independent nation. We're going to do what Trump says, but we're an independent nation. He also went on to say that we're going to do it because we were going to do it anyway. It's always been part of our plan. I'm sure many of you have already seen this, but here is Trump, part one of a press conference he gave at Mar-a-Lago earlier.
Mr. President, if we were to work under the assumption that you're serious about making Canada the 51st state of the United States, the leader of the Conservative Party in Canada said, under no circumstance will it ever be the 51st state.
Maybe he won't win, but maybe he will. I don't
point, you had suggested.
Listen, I don't care what he says.
But Sir, real fast, you said you were considering military force to acquire Panama and Greenland. Are you also considering military force to annex and acquire Canada?
No, economic force, because Canada and the United States, that would really be something. You get rid of that artificially drawn line, and you take a look at what that looks like, and it would also be much better for national security. Don't forget, we basically protect Canada. But here's the problem with Canada. So many friends up there. I love the Canadian people. They're great. But we're spending hundreds of billions a year to protect it. We're spending hundreds of billions a year to take care of Canada. We lose in trade deficits. We're losing massive. We don't need their cars. They make 20% of our cars. We don't need that. I'd rather make them in Detroit. We don't need the cars. We don't need their lumber. We have massive fields of lumber. We don't need their lumber. We have to unrestrict them because stupid people put, restrictions on, but I can do that with an executive order. We don't need anything they have. We don't need their dairy products. We have more than they have. We don't need anything. So why are we losing $200 billion a year and more to protect Canada? And I said that to, as I called him, Governor Trudeau. I said, listen, what would happen if we didn't subsidize you, if we didn't, because we give them a lot of money. We help them. As an example, we're buying icebreakers, and Canada wants to join us in the buying of icebreakers. I said, we don't really want to have a partner in the buying of icebreakers. We don't need a partner. But No right. Nope. No right. Here's what we have. We have a right not to help them with their financial difficulties because we owe $36 trillion too. We're going to start knocking it out pretty fast, but we're going to be able to do it because of energy and other things.
Wait a minute. Hold on. You see where he's going with this when he talks about Greenland, when he talks about Canada, when he talks about icebreakers. Trump is very concerned about the Arctic Circle right now and all of those Chinese destroyers and battleships and submarines and Russian assets as well that are maneuvering around up there. And he wants Canada, Greenland, he wants them as protectorates so that he can go ahead and tell the Russians and the Chinese, get the hell out, among other things like natural resources. But let's continue here.
But no right. No right. But why are we supporting a country, 200 billion plus a year? Our military is at their disposal. All of these other things, they should be a state. That's why I told Trudeau when he came down, I said, what would happen if we didn't do it? He said Canada would dissolve. Canada wouldn't be able to function if we didn't take their 20% of our car market. You know, they send us hundreds of thousands of cars. They make a lot of money with that. They send us a lot of other things that we don't need. We don't need their cars, and we don't need the other products. We don't need their milk. We got a lot of milk. We got a lot of everything, and we don't need any of it. So I said to him, well, why are we doing it? He said, I don't really know. He was unable to answer the question, but I can answer it. We're doing it because of habit, and we're doing it because we like our neighbors, and we've been good neighbors, but we can't do it forever, and it's a tremendous amount of money. And why should we have a $200 billion deficit and add on to that many, many other things that we give them in terms of subsidy? And I said, that's okay to have if you're a state. But if you're another country, we don't want to have it. We're not going to have it with European Union either. European Union, we have a trade deficit of $350 billion. They don't take our cars. They don't take our farm product. They don't take anything. And so we're not going to have it with them either.
All right. How does that make you feel? Immediately, what is the gut reaction that you have watching that video right now? Write it down in the comments, please. I want to see what you guys have to say. For years, I just turned 60 years old 3 weeks ago. And ever since I can remember, Canada has always been protected by the United States. Always has been. I used to talk to my dad about it and some other people who my dad knew. You know how dads get together and they hang out in the garage on a Saturday afternoon with a bottle of rye or some beer and they talk about whatever. And this particular day, they were talking about that, about the United States, about military, because there was a couple of ex-military guys in the garage that day. And the military guys were ashamed because Canada had just dropped the ball, militarily speaking. We were a powerhouse in World War II. And then after that, we just completely and totally gave up military. We just did not contribute to keeping up our military. Then there was the Avro-Aero issue with Diefenbaker in the late 1950s that would have made Canada an aerial superpower, worldwide superpower. But nope, too expensive. We can't have the Avro-Aero. There's actually a CBC series on that starring Dan Aykroyd that goes back about 25 years, worth watching if you can find it anywhere. We have always been the United States' little brother. And I always thought at some point along the way, one day, they're going to say, you know what? This is too expensive. Why should we protect you? What's in it for us? And here's Donald Trump saying that very thing, which is kind of alarming, but for me anyway, expected for the past 30 or so years. Why would they do that? Why would they spend so much money to keep Canada protected? They don't need us. They don't. And he just said that very succinctly in that press conference. And he wasn't done there.
I can't assure you, you're talking about Panama and Greenland. No, I can't assure you on either of those two. But I can say this, we need them for economic security. The Panama Canal was built for our military. I'm not going to commit to that now. It might be that you'll have to do something. Look, the Panama Canal is vital to our country. It's being operated by China. China. And we gave the Panama Canal to Panama. We didn't give it to China. And they've abused it. They've abused that gift. It should have never been made, by the way. Giving the Panama Canal is why Jimmy Carter lost the election, in my opinion, more so maybe than the hostages. The hostages were a big deal. But if you remember, and nobody wants to talk about the Panama Canal now because, you know, it's inappropriate, I guess, but because it's a bad part of the Carter legacy. But he was a good man. Look, he was a good man. I knew him a little bit, and he was a very fine person, but that was a big mistake. Giving the Panama Canal to Panama was a very big mistake. We lost 38,000 people. It cost us the equivalent of $1 trillion, maybe more than that. Probably the most expensive, they say it was the most expensive structure, if we call it a structure, which I guess you can, ever built. And giving that away was a horrible thing. You don't even need binoculars. You look outside, you have China ships all over the place. You have Russian ships all over the place. We're not letting that happen. We're not letting it happen. And if Denmark wants to get to a conclusion, but nobody knows if they even have any right, title, or interest. The people are going to probably vote for independence or to come into the United States. But if they did do that, then I would tariff Denmark at a very high level.
You want to talk about a new world order? Get set for things to change, my friends. They're changing. One way or another, they're changing. There was this thing called AmFest in Phoenix just before Christmas. All the big conservative voices in the United States were there, and Ben Shapiro was one of the guys who was up speaking. Here's Ben Shapiro talking about Trump's dealings with Justin Trudeau.
The tariffs are really designed, not because tariffs are like fun and games. Tariffs are designed for President Trump as leverage. There is no one in the history of American politics who has used leverage better than President Trump. Right? He uses tariffs as a way of threatening countries to do what he wants. So I'll give you a story. I won't give you the source on the story because I don't want to betray confidence, but it's a great story, so I'm going to tell it anyway. Okay, so this is a story I'd never heard anywhere before. Here's the story. President Trump is meeting with Justin Trudeau, okay, who may or may not be Fidel Castro's son. In any case, and by the way, he's totally Fidel Castro's son. Anyway, he's meeting with Justin Trudeau, apparently, during the first administration, and he is asking for a bunch of things, right, for Canada to do. And Trudeau doesn't want to give all of them. So Trump says to his people, bring Justin here, bring Justin to me. So apparently they sit across from one another. And Trudeau is talking with the president, and President Trump says, Justin, I want you to tell me, if there were one thing I could do tomorrow to completely wreck the Canadian economy, what would it be? And Trudeau goes, well, I mean, Mr. President, there are a lot of things. You're a very powerful country, but, you know, if you tariffed our cars, it would be really, really bad. And Trump goes, Justin, I want to teach you a lesson. The first thing not to do in a negotiation is answer the question, if you could do one thing to destroy me, what would it be? So, of course, President Trump continues, I don't care about Canada. I only care about America. So I'm going to tariff all your cars unless you give me what you want. He got what he wanted. Okay, that's how I think President Trump thinks about tariffs.
All right. So what if this is a plan that goes back forever and they're all in on it? And I'm only spitballing here, so don't think I'm crazy. Back in 2015, this goes back to that CBC article that I was talking about 10 minutes ago now. This is that CBC article from 2018. In an astonishing statement to the New York Times in 2015, Justin Trudeau declared, there is no core identity, no mainstream in Canada, and consequently, that makes us the first post-national state. Everything that Justin Trudeau has done in the past 9 years since he's been prime minister seems like it's been devoted to dividing and conquering our country. Not from a military standpoint, but definitely from an economic and societal one. Do you feel as attached to Canada today as you did 10 years ago? They've taken away Canada Day celebrations all across the country and replaced them with what? Aboriginal Day celebrations or whatever celebration suits them in whatever municipality they're holding them in. They made our flags fly at half-mast for 6 months because of what they found in Kamloops near that old residential school, and there's no proof of anything there. Nothing. They made us feel terrible. Well, some of us. I mean, I didn't. Because, a lot of us knew it was all BS, but many people did not. And many people felt like Canada's just such a horrible place. Horrible, horrible place. So with the demoralization almost complete, at least in Trudeau's eyes, then Trump moves in, comes to Canada and says, 51st state? And of course, what does Trudeau say today? Oh, not a snowball's chance in hell of that ever happening. All the liberals all over X and Facebook, we're never going to be the 51st. Like, you guys are the ones that caused all of this mess, and now you're up in arms about it? That is absolutely ludicrous. Am I making too much of this? Is Trump not serious? Is he doing like Ben Shapiro said and only threatening tariffs to get what he wants? Better border security? Or does he mean it? Does he mean that Canada should be a territory or a state of the United States of America? Panama too, Greenland too. Apparently Donald Trump Jr. is in Greenland today, right now. His plane landed there a few hours ago to talk with the government there to see if they're actually tied to Denmark. And if not, hey, let's maybe do a deal here. I'll do the preliminary stuff and my dad will fly up later once he gets, inaugurated. This is all very, very interesting stuff. Let's go to a couple of other stories here before we continue. From the Toronto Sun, Mr. Wonderful, Kevin O'Leary, might be our best hope right now. Because what David Eby, the newly re-elected premier of British Columbia, said, well, I'm going to be getting a team of premiers together and we're going to go to Washington and we're going to meet up with leadership there and we're going to talk about these tariffs. Oh, good luck with that, David. I mean, first of all, you've got to get all the other premiers to agree to what we want as a country. And then somebody has got to be elected the talking head of that group of people and then go down to Washington and deal with the Trump people. And the Trump people are going to know, hey, you're just premiers. You don't represent the country. And by the way, who does represent the country? Do you even have a prime minister right now? And I'm not talking about Trudeau either. Mr. Wonderful? Kevin O'Leary? Mr. Wonderful goes to Mar-a-Lago as speculation ramps up about Trudeau's resignation. Well, he did do that yesterday. At least he says he intends to. So, what do we got here? Globe and Mail reported late Sunday that Trudeau is expected to announce his resignation. One couldn't miss Kevin O'Leary at Mar-a-Lago with the president-elect this past weekend. So he was down there. Just what were they talking about? And O'Leary said, just a couple of guys talking. Just a couple of guys talking. What were you talking about? The Toronto Sun has confirmed O'Leary was not just at the Palm Beach Winter White House with the soon-to-be 47th president Saturday, when Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni was there, but was invited back on Sundays, is going back again tonight. What were they talking about? Has anybody heard about this? I have not heard any of the details of this meeting 15 days out or 13 days out from Trump's inauguration. Is it that Kevin O'Leary is going to be Canada's spokesperson, Canada's unelected spokesperson down there with Trump in the United States? That's hilarious. And there's Trudeau saying, there's not a snowball's chance in hell that Canada would become part of the United States. Alberta has partnered with Enbridge. Here's Danielle Smith jumping into the holes too. Alberta's partnered with Enbridge to double oil production and expand U.S. exports. She doesn't care what anybody says. You're just going to sell the oil. We're going to write the deals before they can bring in the tariffs. Alberta bucking the global push against fossil fuels. With an ambitious plan to double its oil production with the goal of increasing exports to the United States. The government of Alberta working to expand its pipeline capacity and double crude production while boosting exports to the U.S., according to a Monday press release. The province has signed a letter of intent with Enbridge, the energy behemoth headquartered in Calgary, which transports nearly 20% of the natural gas consumed by the United States and accounts for 30% of North America's crude oil production. Hey, Trump, what do you mean you don't need anything from us? Enbridge transported nearly 4.4 billion barrels of oil and liquids in 2023. Over the last decade, Enbridge has transported almost 37 billion barrels of oil. The organization delivers around 5.8 million barrels of crude oil and liquids daily in its cross-continent pipeline network. So that's something. Now, getting to the liberal thing for just a second, the liberal leadership race, we don't even know who's going to be running yet. They haven't enough. You'd think with the lack of time, March 24th is when Parliament is supposed to resume after this prorogation. They'd want a leader in place, and so far we haven't heard really much. We speculate that Chrystia Freeland and Carbon Tax Carney and maybe a couple of other, like, what's her name, BC's ex-premier, Christy Clark, they're going to throw their hats in the ring, but we haven't heard anything official yet. But the rules of this leadership contest are very suspect. According to Brian Lilly, liberal rules mean non-citizens could be choosing the next prime minister because whoever is elected as the liberal leader will automatically become, well, not automatically, they have to go through the ceremonial stuff. They will become prime minister. Will the people who decide the next liberal leader and therefore the next prime minister of Canada even be Canadian? According to liberal rules, liberal constitutional rules, the party's constitution, you don't have to be Canadian and you only have to be 14 years of age to vote in this. It means a 14-year-old from Wuhan, China, a 15-year-old from Belgrade in Russia, 17-year-old student from Gandhingahar in India could have as much impact as voters from Etobicoke, Calgary, or Ottawa in choosing our next prime minister. He goes on to ask, what serious country does this? Ours. We do. Democracy Watch is an organization that's headed up by a lawyer from Toronto, Duff Conacher, and he writes this because, you know, there's still that foreign interference bugaboo that has never been solved in our country because the liberals refuse to hand over some very key documents. And they keep saying, well, Poilievre won't sign the papers. Poilievre won't get his clearance. It's his fault. No. It's not a matter of national security. As a matter of fact, Canadians deserve to know who the traitors are to our country. Don't you think? I do. Public interest, not partisan self-interest, actions needed before prorogation or next federal election. He says Liberals and NDP at least should strike a deal to ensure whistleblower protection bills enacted along with key changes to stop foreign interference. Democracy Watch will challenge a prorogation of Parliament in court, he says, if it's clearly in the Liberal Party's self-interest and happens at a time when opposition parties clearly intend to vote non-confidence in the government. Okay, so this came out yesterday. Democracy Watch called on all parties, or at least the Liberals and NDP, to set aside their partisan self-interest and before a prorogation or federal election happens, act in the public interest by enacting the long-delayed bill that strengthens federal whistleblower protection in key ways, and by enacting bills after the Hogue inquiry reports to close all the huge loopholes that allow for secret, undemocratic, and unethical spending, fundraising, donations, loans, lobbying, and disinformation campaigns by foreign proxies, and to strengthen enforcement and penalties. He says also, Democracy Watch will challenge in court any request by the Prime Minister, the Governor General, prorogue Parliament if the prorogation is clearly, well, it is clearly in the Liberal Party's self-interest. We haven't heard any news on this. So listen, I need a favor from you guys. Duff Conacher is the guy's name. Duff Conacher, the guy who runs Democracy Watch. I would like him to come on the show, but I haven't got a way to get a hold of him, at least not a direct way. So I've sent him a couple of tweets. But if you, watching right now, want to see this guy on the show and get the message out that this is what he's planning on doing, then by all means, feel free to contact him and say, hey, Shadow Davis wants you to come on his show. It's worked in the past. You know, we get like 300 or 400 people message somebody, and then they get a hold of me and say, here, you want me on the show? And I say, yeah, cool. So please get it. Duff Conacher. Duff, like the beer from The Simpsons, Duff. And then Conacher, sounds like an old 50s hockey player name, I know. Conacher. Get a hold of Duff Conacher and tell him Shadow wants you on the show to talk about this court challenge. I'm not even sure it's possible. I want to talk to him about this. He's the lawyer. I'm the interviewer. Look at this. This is absolutely absurd. This news came out today. This capital gains increase the Liberals wanted to do, but haven't been able to make the law because Parliament's been frozen for the past few months. Well, these capital gains tax changes are going to be enforced by Canada Revenue Agency. They're collecting these new charges even without legislation. Unelected bureaucrats are going to start charging people who sell their homes 75% on a capital gains tax as opposed to 50% before the change, without any legislative authority to do so. How is this even possible? The prorogation of Parliament has nothing to do with the prorogation. It has everything to do with Parliament not passing this law, but the CBC story says it's led to confusion around the federal government's plans to boost the rate of tax some Canadians pay on the capital gains or profits they make from selling assets like stocks, family businesses, or a cottage. Last spring, the federal Liberal government proposed changes to how it taxes those capital gains, again from 50 to 75%. The plan was introduced in Parliament in September. It's still being debated when Parliament was prorogued at the request of the Prime Minister on Monday. That's not true. Nothing was being debated in the House of Commons because it was under filibuster, because the Liberals would not provide any documents to the RCMP in their green slush fund scandal. And so all of the opposition parties voted together, and Parliament has been frozen since back in October. So this article from the CBC is completely inaccurate. Anyway, I suppose you could say this is technically true. But regardless, the bill hasn't come close to passing at all. But this prorogation kills all bills and motions that had yet to receive any royal assent, meaning the proposed capital gains changes haven't been approved. Even so, following government practice around tax change proposals, the Canada Revenue Agency has already begun collecting capital gains taxes at the new and higher rate. And there's all kinds of people, including business associations out there, who want to do something about this, but they don't know who to talk to. Say, well, talk to your MP. Say, yeah, I could talk to my MP. What's he or she going to do about it? Parliament's prorogued. There's nobody they can go to with this. There's no committee. There's no department head. There's nothing. We can't do anything. You go to the head of the CRA and say, what are you doing? Hey, I'm just doing my job. No, you're not. No, you're not. This is not law. It was long away from ever becoming law. So why do you think that you have the power to enact it? I guess what I'm saying is, if you had plans to sell anything like a cottage or stocks or anything you'd invested in, hold off until there's an election and this whole thing can be straightened out. That's crazy talk. All right. Dr. William Mackis has a theory on why Justin Trudeau decided to step down so abruptly, even though it wasn't very abrupt, yesterday. And here it is.
Hi, everyone. Dr. William Mackis here. I've got my own theory as to why Justin Trudeau may have resigned unexpectedly today. And honestly, I haven't seen anyone else mention it. So here goes. I think it has to do with pedophilia and child sex trafficking. We've seen in the past couple of weeks, Elon Musk expose the pedophilia scandals involving the UK government, the rape gangs, and just how horrific these crimes were. And going back decades, involving judges, involving police officers, and involving the entire UK government. Well, we've got huge pedophilia scandals right here in Canada. And I haven't seen Elon Musk mention it, but I've been exposing it for the past year. I've been exposing child sex trafficking in British Columbia, where Justin Trudeau used to be a teacher and apparently had a scandal involving some minor students. I've been exposing pedophilia here in Alberta. where the conservative governments of Jason Kenney and most recently Premier Danielle Smith have been either covering up or supporting or defending doctors who were sexually assaulting children, raping them, making child pornography, and were giving their medical licenses back and were allowed to practice while doctors who were prescribing ivermectin were being stripped of their medical licenses. So I don't think this is an accident. I think Justin Trudeau may have been given an option to resign. That, you know, this is a theory, of course. And I think this is all going to lead to something huge at the end of this month. I believe this is leading to an exposure of pedophilia in the United States. The Epstein list, Diddy tapes, Diddy files. I think we're just going to see a massive exposure of these elite pedophile networks in Canada, in the UK, and ultimately leading to the United States. So that's my take on this, Justin Trudeau's unexpected resignation.
And a hot take it is, Doc. You got to get William back on the show at some point soon. The story of Ottawa Police Detective Helen Grus continues. Her tribunal was back yesterday. Her lawyer is Bathsheba Vandenberg. Hopefully we can get Helen and Bathsheba on the show in the next little while once they start talking to media. They had a day off today and they're back at it tomorrow. And for those of you that don't know the story of Detective Grus, our friend Dave Freedom in Toronto, the lawyer, not lawyer, who's been helping people with their legal cases from the convoy and whatnot for the past couple of years, has been putting videos together of what he feels are very important legal cases that have been going on across the country. So Dave contacted me on Sunday, wasn't feeling well. Usually he voices these things himself, but he wasn't feeling well, didn't have a voice. And so he asked me if I would do it. And I said, absolutely. And so Dave has put this together. It was available this morning. I think it's got over 1,000 shares on Dave's Facebook page. It's on my Facebook page as well and on my X. Go and share this. Get this out to as many people as you possibly can. Awareness is the only weapon we have against these criminals. So here is the video, the story of Detective Helen Grus so far. Ottawa Police Detective Helen Grus urgently needs our support. She's been charged with discreditable conduct and is on the brink of losing everything for simply doing her job, investigating 9 unexplained infant deaths potentially linked to their mother's vaccination status. Among the evidence she uncovered and presented to her superiors was a Pfizer report revealing that 31 out of 32 pregnancies ended in spontaneous abortion. Early in her investigation in December 2021 and January 2022, Detective Grus warned Chief Peter Slowly and Deputy Chief Patricia Ferguson that the Pfizer vaccine had never been tested on pregnant women and that her squad had noted an alarming rise in unexplained infant deaths. As her investigation gained momentum, connecting disturbing dots, the Ottawa police quickly suspended Detective Grus for conducting a purported unauthorized investigation, despite the fact that Grus had briefed the Chief of Police, Deputy Chief, and Service Sergeant Major Daniluk. But a suspension alone wasn't enough. Those pulling the strings needed to send a chilling message, not just to Helen Grus, but to over 70,000 police officers across Canada. That message? Investigating potential links between the COVID vaccines and a growing number of injuries and deaths would not be tolerated. There was one obstacle, though. Helen's investigation was confidential, so a full-scale public defamation campaign couldn't happen without breaching that confidentiality. And then, predictably, it happened. In March 2022, 2 Ottawa police officers betrayed their duty, illegally leaking confidential information about Detective Grus's investigation and the grieving families of the infants to CBC journalist Shamini Yogaretnam. CBC published 2 articles that defamed Detective Grus, calling her actions rogue. The articles also falsely claimed that Grus had improperly obtained coroner's records for the deceased infants. Ottawa Police Professional Standards, in an effort to cover their tracks, refused Detective Grus's demands that they launch a criminal investigation to identify the two involved officers. But why would they do their job, right?
Whoever leaked that information to Shimini, who made that ultimatum for the police to then call the parents and to re-traumatize them, and probably to encourage them to make a public complaint against Detective Grus, those are the police officers that committed a privacy breach.
It's particularly notable that during Detective Grus's investigation into the 9 infant deaths, it emerged that her colleague, Detective Tara Anderson, had failed to document the vaccine status of the parents and infants, something that had been standard requirement for decades. This glaring oversight placed Anderson in an unfavorable light. Instead of addressing her own failings, Anderson lodged a complaint against Grus with professional standards. Even more striking, evidence later revealed that Anderson's written complaint included the phrase, "The death of a child is the worst experience a parent will ever go through." Why is that phrase interesting? Because in Shimini Yogaretnam's CBC articles, it had reported that one of her anonymous police sources who illegally leaked the investigation had used this exact same phrase. Detective Aaron McMullen, another officer who filed complaints against Grus, was recently promoted to sergeant despite a troubling history, including neglect in a domestic violence case that tragically ended in the murder of Hannity Muhammad. A promotion based on merit? Hardly. One might wonder if this was a reward for her role in testifying against Detective Grus. But all this aside, the calculated actions of the Ottawa Police, rogue officers, and state-funded CBC achieved their intended goal. Since Detective Grus was suspended and not charged, not a single Canadian police officer has dared to investigate the overwhelming evidence suggesting that those responsible for manufacturing, purchasing, and mandating the vaccines were well aware they were neither safe nor effective. Following Detective Grus's suspension in February of 2022 and desperate for ammunition, the Ottawa Police illegally wiretapped Grus and her family, hoping to find incriminating evidence. After 2 days of surveillance, misusing the urgent emergency terrorism wiretap provisions, they found nothing. Detective Grus's tribunal has been steeped in bias and corruption. Prosecutor Vanessa Stewart, whose sister-in-law testified against Detective Grus, repeatedly interrupted and objected to defense questioning often before the questions were even fully asked. Stewart has since been replaced by Ottawa law firm Perley Robertson, led by Linda Bordelot, who, by the way, is married to former Ottawa Police Chief Charles Bordelot. Interesting to note, Linda Bordelot was involved in a 2016 conflict of interest scandal that exposed nepotism among top police families in the Ottawa area, including the Bordelot, Callahan, and Thompson families. Deals were made, witnesses were absent, and charges were dropped against a family member and former chief of police. As the saying goes, it's a club, and Detective Helen Grus is not in it. Meanwhile, adjudicator Chris Renwick, presiding over Grus's tribunal, actively undermines her defense at every turn, denying all 5 expert witnesses, ruling that defense questions be submitted in advance and even at times forbidding Grus from reviewing her own handwritten notes. Professional Standards Inspector Hugh O'Toole also crossed ethical lines, threatening Grus that she should not present certain evidence in her defense, including internal Ottawa police documents, a clear case of criminal witness tampering and obstruction of justice, according to Grus's outraged defense lawyers. Within weeks of these allegations surfacing, O'Toole quietly resigned. According to internal police sources, he was strongly advised to step down. Now, as Detective Helen Grus approaches the final leg of her tribunal, her case has become the longest and most costly prosecution in Ottawa police history. Adding to the injustice, her own police union abandoned her, refusing to cover her legal fees, a stark contrast to the same union's swift support for Eric Post, an officer who faced 32 charges, including sexual assault and forcible confinement. Detective Grus's case has ignited serious questions about transparency, accountability, and the duties of police officers to conduct investigations without political interference or fear of retaliation. The outcome of her case will no doubt set a precedent, shaping how politically sensitive investigations are handled in the future. In speaking of the Ottawa police cover-up of the Grus investigation, retired New York police detective and Medal of Honor recipient Frank Serpico said, "Incompetence or criminality will go to any length not to be exposed, even at the cost of innocent infant lives. When courageous officers like Helen Grus are targeted and punished for pursuing the truth, it falls on us to stand with them. Public awareness is the most powerful weapon we have against injustice, which is why this video is necessary."
The question is this: what is your price? Is it 10 million? Is it 20 million? Is it 100 million? What is your price? Because if your price is not your life, then you are for sale. If your price is not your life, then you are for sale.
Great piece written and produced by Dave Freedom. I was lucky enough to voice it. I could have done better, but I rushed it because I knew that Helen's tribunal was starting on Monday. This was on Sunday night, and I just wanted him to have the audio so he could work with it. And I know that it takes time to put something like that together. So great job, Dave. Look for Helen Grus's fundraising on Give, Send, Go. Just type into your search Give, Send, Go, and then Helen Grus, and it's spelled, Grus is spelled Grus. She's raised 85,000 of 150,000. These are legal funds. This is Helen Grus standing up for what's right, standing up for her life, really, and standing up for the truth. And I can't even, when I read that script on Sunday night, I knew about this case, but I didn't realize how deep the corruption went and what she has been facing for these past couple of years now. It's insane. It's insane. So if you're in the position to help Detective Grus out, then please go ahead and do that. All of the people who turned their backs on her, she was very well respected within the Ottawa Police Service. Very well respected. And all of these people who double-crossed her, all of these people who have been working against her, I mean, that video exposes it all. What have they got to say? Are they going to talk to independent media? Let's say Right Blend shows up there, Dacey shows up there. Are they going to talk to them? No, of course they're not. They'll talk to the CBC, though, because CBC's in on it. They're in on it. Sickening. Mark Zuckerberg said today that he's removing the fact checkers. It's a big announcement. It's going to start in the United States. And I put this up today on my Facebook page, and I think on X as well, because I want Zuckerberg to remove any restrictions that he has put on my page and others like it, simply for telling the truth, simply for stating fact-checked, obvious lab reports, scientific analysis, because it's usually about, the vaccine, right? So Zuckerberg says, we're going to get rid of these fact checkers. That's the first thing we're going to do. We're going to start in the US, but listen to this whole thing. He dropped this video today. It's about 5 minutes long. It's going to branch out worldwide eventually. So here's Big Zuck.
Hey everyone. I want to talk about something important today because it's time to get back to our roots around free expression on Facebook and Instagram. I started building social media to give people a voice. I gave a speech at Georgetown 5 years ago about the importance of protecting free expression, and I still believe this today. But a lot has happened over the last several years. There's been widespread debate about potential harms from online content. Governments and legacy media have pushed to censor more and more. A lot of this is clearly political, but there's also a lot of legitimately bad stuff out there. Drugs, terrorism, child exploitation. These are things that we take very seriously, and I want to make sure that we handle responsibly. So we built a lot of complex systems to moderate content. But the problem with complex systems is they make mistakes. Even if they accidentally censor just 1% of posts, that's millions of people. And we've reached a point where it's just too many mistakes and too much censorship. The recent elections also feel like a cultural tipping point towards once again prioritizing speech. So we're going to get back to our roots and focus on reducing mistakes, simplifying our policies, and restoring free expression on our platforms.
You know, I think he's FOS. Personally, I think that Trump, Musk, everybody else has threatened him, and he's got to do this. And if he doesn't do this, he's going to be going to prison. He will be going to prison for working behind the scenes with the alphabet agencies to allow censorship. He was complicit in breaking the Constitution of the United States of America, allegedly. So he has no choice. Anyway, let's continue on.
More specifically, here's what we're going to do. First, we're going to get rid of fact checkers and replace them with community notes similar to X, starting in the US. After Trump first got elected in 2016, the legacy media wrote nonstop about how misinformation was a threat to democracy. We tried in good faith to address those concerns without becoming the arbiters of truth. But the fact checkers have just been too politically biased and have destroyed more trust than they've created, especially in the US. So over the next couple of months, we're going to phase in a more comprehensive community notes system. Second, we're going to simplify our content policies and get rid of a bunch of restrictions on topics like immigration and gender that are just out of touch with mainstream discourse. What started as a movement to be more inclusive has increasingly been used to shut down opinions and shut out people with different ideas, and it's gone too far. So I want to make sure that people can share their beliefs and experiences on our platforms. Third, we're changing how we enforce our policies to reduce the mistakes that account for the vast majority of censorship on our platforms. We used to have filters that scanned for any policy violation. Now, we're going to focus those filters on tackling illegal and high-severity violations. And for lower severity violations, we're going to rely on someone reporting an issue before we take action. The problem is that the filters make mistakes, and they take down a lot of content that they shouldn't. So by dialing them back, we're going to dramatically reduce the amount of censorship on our platforms. We're also going to tune our content filters to require much higher confidence before taking down content. The reality is that this is a trade-off. It means we're going to catch less bad stuff, but we'll also reduce the number of innocent people's posts and accounts that we accidentally take down. Fourth, we're bringing back civic content. For a while, the community asked to see less politics because it was making people stressed. So we stopped recommending these posts. But it feels like we're in a new era now, and we're starting to get feedback that people want to see this content again.
Oh, that is such crap. If you don't want to see it, you don't have to look at it. It's always been like that. And the algorithms on Facebook and on Instagram work that way. If you don't click on those posts, they don't come across your feed. So this is nothing more than a steaming pile of,
So we're going to start phasing this back into Facebook, Instagram, and Threads while working to keep the communities friendly and positive. Fifth, we're going to move our trust and safety and content moderation teams out of California, and our US-based content review is going to be based in Texas.
Okay, this is awesome. This is awesome. And I'll tell you why. Because, and this is what I've been saying about government. Those who work for the federal government, not just in Canada, but everywhere. You take those people out of Washington, you take them out of Ottawa, you take provincial capitals and take the people out of Winnipeg and Edmonton and Regina and Victoria, and you put them in a small town, and you eventually start to take on the attitudes of the people around you. That's what happens. That's what happens. Right? So he's taking these moderators and he's taking them out of California. He's maybe just fire all those people and hire some new ones, all wearing cowboy hats in Texas. That's going to be classic.
As we work to promote free expression, I think that it will help us build trust to do this work in places where there is less concern about the bias of our teams. Finally, we're going to work with President Trump to push back on governments around the world that are going after American companies and pushing to censor more. The US has the strongest constitutional protections for free expression in the world.
Okay, guys, this is the important part. If you wonder if Canada will benefit from this, first of all, Poilievre or some other right-wing politician has to win an election in Canada so we can get rid of C-18 and C-11. Right? C-63 is dead, by the way. It's dead. It's gone. But we got to get rid of these other two censorship bills, 11 and 18. So once those are gone, then Canada can't do anything to do censorship at all because there won't be a law in place. And theoretically, they shouldn't be able to do it even now because it is unconstitutional here as well. And there is no emergency in place, so Section 1 of the Charter wouldn't apply. But anyway, this is extremely important, this part here.
Europe has an ever-increasing number of laws institutionalizing censorship and making it difficult to build anything innovative there. Latin American countries have secret courts that can order companies to quietly take things down. China has censored our apps from even working in the country. The only way that we can push back on this global trend is with the support of the US government. And that's why it's been so difficult over the past 4 years when even the US government has pushed for censorship. By going after us and other American companies, it has emboldened other governments to go even further. But now we have the opportunity to restore free expression, and I am excited to take it. It'll take time to get this right, and these are complex systems. They're never going to be perfect. There's also a lot of illegal stuff that we still need to work very hard to remove. But the bottom line is that after years of having our content moderation work focus primarily on removing content, it is time to focus on reducing mistakes, simplifying our systems.
You hear what he said there? After years of having work primarily to removing content. That's all they've been doing on Facebook for the past few years. That's amazing to me.
Getting back to our roots about giving people voice. I'm looking forward to this next chapter. Stay good out there, and more to come soon.
Mark Zuckerberg.
I'm looking forward to free speech.
Somebody asked in the comments, hey, why Texas? Why did they pick Texas? Well, they look at Texas as kind of a purple state, even though it's not. It's a red state. But they see it as a purple state. So there's equal amount Democrats, equal amount Republicans, equal amount right, equal amount left. And so it's a more balanced society. And maybe in the big cities, they got a point. So what they should do is put this new Facebook operation, they're moving to Texas, right in the middle. Right in the middle. Small city. Small town. Yeehaw, baby. Let's go. Where everybody wears big belt buckles and cowboy hats. That's what I want to see. Meta employees even now are complaining. They're criticizing Zuckerberg in this decision. But Zuckerberg says, okay, I'm going to add Dana White to the board of directors from UFC. That Dana White, the one who has been raving against censorship for the past 5 years. Meta employees took to their internal forum criticizing the company's decision to end third-party fact-checking on its services 2 weeks before Trump's inauguration. One worker said it appears Meta is sending a bigger, stronger message to people that facts no longer matter and conflating that with a victory for free speech. No. Again, this person misses the point. Free speech should be free speech, whether a person is right or wrong, right? And if they say something that is harmful to another person, that person can sue the person who wrote it. That's how things work. Facebook shouldn't have to worry about that stuff because they're not a publisher. They're not responsible for what somebody puts on their post. That's the way it's always been. There never should have been any censorship to begin with. The announcement comes a day after Meta announced that UFC CEO and longtime Trump friend Dana White is joining the board of directors. So do you think that Zuckerberg is serious, and does he have some explaining to do for the past 5 years? Well, Brianne Dressen thinks so. Brianne is vaccine injured. She's the mother of 2 injured AstraZeneca clinical trial participant, now disabled. Vaccine injury advocate, and she is the co-founder of React 19. You may have heard of that organization. He says, Mr. Zuckerberg, you owe a lot of families an apology. Anyone who questioned vaccines, anyone who questioned mandates, anyone harmed by vaccines, anyone who lost their support network due to your censorship, anyone in support groups that were abruptly shut down, anyone who ended their lives due to being silenced. Facebook literally drove vaccine-injured people into isolation, sometimes ending in death. Mr. Zuckerberg, how are you going to make this right? All right, that is it for the show tonight on social media. We're going to continue on shadowdavis.com with all access members for the extension in just a couple of minutes. And tonight, it's The Illusion of Canada. It's a 45-minute movie released a couple of days ago by an organization called, let me just check here, Life Force Canada. Now, I've been sent this, I can't even tell you how many times by people say, watch this, watch this, watch this. So we're going to watch it all together tonight on the extension on shadowdavis.com in just a couple of minutes. For the rest of you, I will catch you tomorrow night. Don't forget Jasmine Lane of Overly Opinionated with Jasmine Lane on YouTube is my guest tomorrow night. That's going to be fun. I love you all. I appreciate you all. And I will catch you tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. Bye for now.